Started. And welcome everybody to today's series. The series this week has been on career prep, and today's theme this week's theme is landing the job you want. Today's session is on interviewing. And once again, I'm welcoming Mina Stallworth and Kaylee Cooper from Express Pros. And with that, Kaylee and Mina, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sounds good. I'll go first. My name is Mina Stallworth, and I've been with Express Professionals for about 5 years now. I specialize in administrative related positions. So anything from an entry-level customer service position to a high-level account manager, anything in the accounting field, anything on the marketing space in terms of design and digital marketing, sales, executive assistant, administrative support. So I help basically candidates from many different tiers and levels of the different backgrounds coming into, whether they're looking for a new career path, whether they're looking to start their career path, whether they're looking to switch gears, just many different aspects and perspectives in terms of people looking for jobs. And I'm here to sort of help them. And I feel that I can connect with a lot of these candidates because I started as an admin candidate myself. I started in retail, worked my way up into an admin role, and then eventually sort of grew into the position that I'm in today. So I love to be able to help people find the right connections with the right companies. And so that has been my specialty for probably the last 8 years altogether. I've been with Express for 5 years. So it's good to have you guys here today.
Thanks so much for joining us. I've been with Express just a short time, just about 8 months here, but I've been working in recruitment and professional job placement for 4 to 5 years. So I actually specialize in skilled trades recruiting. I know Mina heads up our administrative recruiting functions as she was discussing, and I'm kind of on the other side of that where I work with maintenance technicians, we have CNC operators, we have a lot of skilled trades candidates that work in manufacturing plants, some apartment maintenance candidates that work in facilities or residential. Those are the types of positions that I recruit and interview for. Mina and I both live in interviews. We interview people for a living. So we spend a lot of time talking with others and getting to hear their stories. We also have some tips and tricks on what you can do so that when you're getting ready for your maybe first interview or your 10th interview, you have a system down and you know how to go in and kind of act and make sure that you're all squared up. A couple of things about me. My first job out of high school was as a dishwasher with a bakery, and I did that full time for 3 years as I kind of went to school. So sometimes when we talk to students, they're like, well, you're professionals in an office. I'm not going to be able to get a job like that right away. Well, it's a work in progress for everybody. Your first job may not be your dream job, but it may get you some skills that you can use to get your dream job. So it's really important that when you're interviewing, you're presenting your best self, even if the job isn't exactly what you're looking to do someday, so that you can get some skills and get some experience to get into that dream job in the future. So traditionally, when we talk about interviews, there are 3 parts. There's how to prepare for the interview, there's nailing the interview once you're in it, and then there's the after interview follow-up part. Mina, when you're getting ready to prepare for an interview, what are some of the things that you are doing to make sure you're successful?
You mean when I'm interviewing people or when I was interviewing myself?
Yourself, or if you're making suggestions for someone who's getting ready for an interview, what are some of the best practices?
I think it's always really great, like Kaylee mentioned, to put your best foot forward. You always want to represent yourself as a professional candidate, even if it's not exactly the type of job that you're looking for. You always want to see the big picture. Any kind of an exposure to the operational world, to the workforce, is always can be a really great experience. Even if it's not exactly an ideal experience, it's still a learning method, right? Because you sort of learn what you do want to do and you don't want to do, what type of environment you want to be in, what type of environment you don't want to be in. So it's really great to be able to go in with a really positive perspective and outlook, and really be really prepared in terms of doing your homework about the company, understanding what type of job you're applying for, understanding, maybe doing some research about the people that you are interviewing with. there's, obviously with technology and social media and LinkedIn and that sort of thing, it's really good to be able to sort of do some due diligence before jumping into an interview and really learning about the company's values and mission, and again, also having a really good understanding of the type of jobs that you're applying for, and having a good understanding how you're going to be able to present yourself as a viable candidate for that type of a job. So.
Yeah, that's great. I think another thing too, as you're getting ready for the interview, you're researching the company, as Mina suggested. You're looking them up on Google, looking them up on LinkedIn if you have a LinkedIn account, being able to learn more about them. I also think as you're getting ready to go in for an interview, making sure that you know exactly where to go, who to ask for, making sure you give yourself plenty of extra time to get there. I personally have gotten myself lost on the way to a first interview, and you don't want to be in that situation. Take my word for it. So pull it up on a map, or if you have a smartphone, you should have a Maps app on there, punch it in, make sure you give yourself time to be at least 15 minutes early so you can get to exactly where you need to go and be ready for that. Another thing,
I've even driven by the location pre a couple of days before, just to make sure I knew exactly where it was, just because I didn't want to risk of being late. So
yes.
Someone actually asked a really good question on here in the chat. If they said, how do you decide what profession was right for you? To be honest, from a personal experience, I really didn't. It took me a really long time to really understand what career paths to really kind of pursue. I knew that I was really good at certain things, but I wasn't really sure exactly what that looked like. I think with experience and just going out there and knowing that I wanted to utilize certain skill sets and doing my research and understanding what career paths would be potentially give me the opportunity to open some doors for me is how I sort of kind of created a pathway and a strategy to be able to say, okay, I'm really good at working with people. I really feel like I have an innate need to be really high productive, and I like to move around, and I like to be active, and I like to be strategic. What else do I like to do? I also know that I have sort of a little bit of a leadership essence in me, and so can I best utilize that? I know while I was going to school, when I was finishing my degree, my business degree, I always wanted to be in a consulting role. I would say I want to go into businesses and help them become a better company and better business, and somehow found my way sort of into being a staffing, being a recruiter and a consultant, which really kind of paid out very similar to what I had hoped. Now, not maybe in the HR field, but definitely very similar, where we're working with clients and we're working with candidates to make sure that they're connected, and there's some consulting that goes into that. And so I think it was a little bit of trial and error, but I think that every experience that I had, good or bad, I decided that I wanted to learn from it and not make the same mistakes again, and just sort of really assess and reevaluate those experiences and see what I wanted to do differently and how I wanted to go about that. And so that kind of led me into this position here. And someone actually gave me a chance. Someone just said, I think you would be really good at this. About 7-8 years ago, they said, I think you'd be really good at doing this. And are you up for it? And I said, yes. And so I was successful at it. And then ever since then, it just ended up being my career path. So there's really no perfect answer for that. It's just really, it's sort of a journey that you have to be okay with kind of taking on and going down that path. Hopefully that answers.
There are so many options too.
Absolutely.
Even if we just look at the jobs we fill at Express, we have 5 different divisions that we fill jobs. So there are so many options out there for you. And I think there are a lot of resources online. I know that your school's put together some resources too, to be able to kind of explore what those options look like. But the great thing about interviewing is that if you get into an interview and you say, ooh, this job doesn't seem like something I'd like, you're not signed, sealed, ready to go. You're just talking about the job. So it kind of gives you some exposure and some practice in having conversations and learning about jobs and kind of deciding what you might like to do. So really, I think interviewing and applying for jobs is a great way to start looking at like what that could look like for you. Another thing we talk about in getting ready for an interview is, how to dress. And there are a lot of different ways you can dress in an interview. You kind of want to tailor it to the type of position you're applying for. So for someone coming in for an entry-level administrative position, Mina, how would you recommend that they, look for that?
I would definitely want to make sure that they're know what an administrative assistant does and what industry that they're working within, because administrative assistant positions can look a little bit different depending on the size of the company, the industry, the environment. So you just really want to make sure that you have a good idea of what's required of you in that sort of a role, and then also understanding as much as possible about the company, so that way you can align your answers to basically match the company. Again, interviewing, we call that a little bit of an art. It is definitely something that you have to really be tuned in with. Not two people interview the same, not two people who are interviewing you will ever interview the same. So it takes a lot of interpersonal skills to be able to go into an interview and really be able to read the room and understand who you're talking to. The body language is really important from both aspects. There's a lot of personal awareness and then a social awareness that kind of goes into an interview, because you have to be really tuned in with yourself and everyone in the room. So really, I tell people an interview is really just a conversation. There's obviously an end goal there, but it's just really a conversation. You're checking them out, they're checking you out, you're answering questions, they're answering questions from you, and you just getting to know each other to make sure you're a good match. Oftentimes I sometimes with some of my candidates, I compare it a little bit with the dating scene, and I say, you go out there, you date, you see what you want, what you don't want, what kind of person you like, what you don't like, and then you sort of narrow that down and decide that, okay, so I'm starting to learn a little bit about this thing. And so the workforce has a very similar sort of an outlook on that. So it's really good to be able to really understand who you're talking to, right? So, and really understanding the job description. And job descriptions can be kind of vague sometimes, and it's just more of an overall description. So it's really good to know what skill sets you're going to be able to bring to the table to match what some of those highlighted verbiage that's in the job description, how you're going to be able to align yourself with that. So yeah. There's some good questions pouring into the chat. I don't know if you want to answer any of those.
Yeah, there are some questions about how long do interviews last? What are the hardest questions to answer in interviews? I would say, from what I see, interviews usually last anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the kind of job you're interviewing for. If you're looking at interviewing for your first job, I would plan to be there for at least a half hour. You're going to be talking with the manager or whoever you're interviewing with. You're going to be going over the job to see if it's something that you might like. They might show you around. So in that interview, you're really getting to know, what you might be doing and what the company looks like, and how it could work for what you're looking for. So you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And I know that sounds probably kind of scary when you're looking at interviewing for your first job, but that's really how it is. It's a conversation, just like Mina said, to get to know them a little bit. They're going to get to know you. Some of the hardest questions that I see people struggle with are talking about their strengths and weaknesses. And it sounds cliche because, everyone always says, oh, in an interview, what are your top 5 strengths, your top 5 weaknesses? I've had companies actually ask me that. And so I had to think on the spot and say, well, what am I really good at? What are some areas that I'm not good at or that I've improved at over the last couple of years? So a couple of areas for me that I'm good at, I'm very organized. And so that's something I talk about in interviews when a company asks me, what am I good at? When they ask me what are some areas that I need to improve or that I continue to improve, part of mine has been improving my communication. So coming from a background where I worked in a restaurant for years, I didn't have this kind of office communication skill. I didn't use email to talk to people, it was all verbal. So I've had to really work on how to use technology to communicate with my team. And that's a skill I've had to improve. So being able to talk about things you're not as good at, as well as talk about things you're really good at, is really important. And something I always suggest is, sit down and make a list of things you're good at and things that you could work on. And that'll help you with some of the questions you're getting during the interview. Preparing for an interview, again, making lists of things you're good at, things you'd like to do, reading about the job and what you might be doing, making sure it sounds like something you'd like to do. and then going in and talking with them about it. There are several different questions you may get asked during an interview. People are probably going to ask you, why do you want this job? So make sure that you have an answer prepared for that. And it doesn't have to be a super in-depth answer. It can be, well, I'd like to gain more experience working with people. So I want to work in this retail job or this customer service job. You don't have to have your lifelong career plan to answer that question. You just need to know that something that's on the description you read is going to match up with something you're looking for. And that's really what companies want to hear from you during the interview.
Yeah. I want to make sure that I get everyone's question. I noticed there's someone asked earlier, how many people do we interview? How often do we interview people? So really, honestly, anywhere from 2 people a day to 3 to 4 people a day. Sometimes, we may end up with 15 interviews on a weekly basis. So it really just depends on some of the volume that we get, and we obviously don't really want to turn a really great candidate down. So if we can squeeze them into our busy calendar, we definitely do that. So it really does vary, but really it's definitely at least two, I would say minimum 2 a day. And again, it could vary depending on availability and that sort of thing. The other thing that I would tag along in terms of your interviewing success plan, a lot of, especially with people who are trying to sort of pursue careers in more of an administrative, sort of field, and just really working with people. A lot of employers will probably ask you a lot of behavioral and situational questions. So meaning that they're going to ask you, they're going to put a hypothetical situation in front of you and say, how would you respond to this in a situation like this? So it's sort of and it's a folded question, right? Because they really want to understand a couple of different things about you, right? So and then they may ask you some behavioral question, meaning how do you behave in a situation like this, or how would you address this situation? So they kind of go hand in hand together, but really it's typically they're wanting to understand, how well do you work under stress? If someone upsets you, how do you respond to it? How are your troubleshooting mechanisms? How do you respond under pressure? What situation, what would be your first point of, where is your sort of, how quick are you on your feet when it comes to, having to put out a fire? Or what do you do when you don't know the answer to something? So those are answers, basically really gives them an idea of whether you are the type of person that they're looking for. So they may not ask you a lot of yes and no question. They may ask you a lot of open-ended question, meaning that they're not gonna gear a question that your answer would be yes or no. They're gonna ask you questions that you're gonna have to really think about and then respond. But that's why really authenticity and being honest and really being true to yourself, and that's why learning about yourself before you go into an interview, it's sort of a little bit of a soul searching process, really saying, this is how I want to be presented. This is how I want people to see me. This is what I want them to perceive of me. Going into that with that level of honesty and authenticity really put you in a position where they either think you're a great fit or you don't, or they don't, and that's okay. But really, it's all about just, again, that goes back to that conversation. Have a conversation with them. If you don't know the answer, ask a follow-up question. It's just really about being able to be friendly, be open, be communicative, and just really watching the room and answering the questions as accurately and as honestly as possible. So
that's such a great point. And, especially when you're interviewing for your first job, you may not be completely comfortable in the situation. It's going to feel a little bit weird. You're going to feel on the spot. You may be a little bit nervous. You may blank on a question. That's a great question someone asked in the chat. What do I do if I blank on a question? So for me, if I blank on a question, usually the first thing out of my mouth is, that's a really great question. Yep. And that's my go-to line. As I'm saying that, I'm thinking about an answer. If I don't have an answer, just like Mina said, follow up with another question. Could you give me an example of what you're referring to?
Okay, elaborate, please.
Yeah.
Right, it's okay.
Buy yourself some time to think about what an answer would be. And there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer to a lot of the questions. It's going to be about what's true of you. And especially if you don't have work history, if this is your first job, you're going to be really talking about who you are and why you can do the job, even if you don't have proven time doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How important is to research a company and know something about them for the interview? It's very important. I've had candidates who have been turned away for not having any idea how to answer a question about the company or about the job. It's definitely a sort of a deal breaker for a lot of people. You definitely want to go into it with a really clear understanding of what the company does, what industry they're in. And, thank God for technology, right? Websites are your best friend in these type of situations. There is Glassdoor, there's LinkedIn, there is Indeed. You can do reviews on the company. You can do all type of analysis, and that's obviously a little bit further down the line, but there's definitely information out there for you to really. I always recommend people checking out the website and really understanding what the company stands for, making sure you understand their vision and mission. They love to hear that. Companies love it when you've done your research. Companies love it because they think you're thorough, they think you're excited, they think you want the job, and they're going to stop and say, good. I've actually been in a situation where someone who I was interviewing with said, wow, you've done your research, that's impressive. More often than none, you hear that from people who you definitely want to stand out. You definitely want to make sure that you're competing with other applicants and interviewers. So you definitely want to make sure that you're bringing something different to the table that's going to make you stand out. That shows that hunger, that shows that excitement. And so I would say it's very important to do your research.
I totally agree. And I think especially as you're looking at your first job, you need to show that you have an interest in the job because they don't have any past experience or skills to hire you from. So they're totally going off of the way that you present yourself. Mm-hmm. And the next question there is, what's the biggest mistake you see interviewees make? And I think for me, the biggest mistake is having someone come in and not show me that they want the job. So you can show someone that you want the job by doing your research. You can show them by dressing appropriately, by having a smile on your face the entire time, even if it feels kind of weird or cheesy. It's important that your body language and your nonverbals show that you want the job and that you're eager and that you have a great attitude. So for me, that was a hard learning curve. Especially in school, I was a kid that sat in the back. I was not a big smiler. I was not a big socializer. So learning how to interview meant for me changing my norm. And so making sure you're sitting up straight. Don't be too squirrely in your chair. Make sure you're smiling. Make sure you're not talking too fast. Those are nonverbals that you can practice even at home that can teach you to be a better interviewer. And you could sit down with a friend or a parent or someone you know and say, how do I look? Do I look excited to be talking with you right now? Because that's the way you want to present yourself. So for me, that's the biggest mistake I see is someone will come in, they'll be slumped down in their chair, they'll be mumbling, answering questions. You want to show you're excited.
But you also want to have really good posture. You want to sit up straight. You want to seem confident. Sadly, sometimes I come across candidates who can very well do the job, are very qualified to be able to do the job. I see the potential in them. I think they're great. But unfortunately, sometimes they don't see that in themselves. And so that confidence doesn't show it within yourself. And it obviously doesn't show when someone's interviewing you. And so then that's going to create doubt, right? So you don't ever want to give someone the room to doubt your capabilities. So definitely want to go in there being confident. But again, you want to teeter that. There's that cocky and overly confident versus just confident enough where you're able to sort of, again, I think the authenticity piece really comes in when it shows your confidence. So it does sort of go hand in hand. What are some of the set of words you want people to say in an interview? Really,
I was just going to say, ladies, we have high time we got about 2 minute warning, so this might be one of our last 2 questions. So
sure, okay.
So, sorry.
So what are the set of words that you want people to say in an interview? Honestly, it really just depends on. I would say go back to the job description. Make sure that you're understanding certain verbiage that they're using. Maybe if there is the word collaborative, or if there's emphasis on and there's emphasis on team player, or if there's it's very process oriented, or have good examples. If they're asking you, we're looking for someone. Make sure you're always reading the qualifications of the job, not just the job summary or the description. Understanding there are certain words that companies are throwing out there that sort of will stick out to you. right? If they're saying we really want someone who's cool, calm, and collected, right? That probably means that maybe the position is a little bit higher pressure. So have answers ready to go in there and say, how are you cool, calm, and collected? What are you bringing to the table in terms of being able to keep your calm and keeping your cool and being able to handle pressure well? So it's just really reading through some of the information that's on there, and whatever sticks out to you, there's probably, use your intuition. Humans are very intuitive. So we really have to sort of tap into that and really say, this word stuck out to me. I should probably be prepared for that, right? So there's that one. And then what important questions may you get asked in an interview? Kaylee, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think some of the basic, most important questions I ask is, why did you apply for this job? Why are you interested in it? Why are you interested in working with our company? What kind of work are you wanting to do in the future? You know, what shift or what hours or days are you comfortable working? Some jobs may require that you work weekends. Some jobs may require you work nights. So making sure you're prepared with an answer for when do you actually want to be working is important. They may ask you about, you know, some experiences that you've had. You know, tell me about a time when a friend let you down. How did you handle that situation? Some of the questions may be open-ended and they're going to vary. But it's really important that you have those basic questions of, what do I want to do here? Why do I want to do it here? When am I available to do it? And how do I think that I could handle this job?
Okay, great. Oh, wow. I wish we could keep on going because we're A, getting some good questions, and B, you are just providing a lot of great, really great nuggets of information.
Good.
One of the biggest things as we wrap this up that I'm hearing from you is, for people who are ready or getting ready to go out and look for a job, whether it's your first job or it's you've been in the industry and out there for 15 to 20 years, is really understanding yourself, what you want, what you're looking for, narrowing that down so that you're trying to find a job or job opportunities that align with that. It sounds like you have to know yourself a little bit.
Absolutely.
You have to know the other company before you go out and just do an interview. You have to really do your homework and do your research so that you have to see, hey, you can prove to them that what I've learned and who I am and my skill sets match it really well with what you're looking for. Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome. I mean, again, we could be talking about this for quite a bit longer. I do want to start to wrap it up though. So I've got a couple last things to share here. Can you see my screen again? All right, excellent. So I want to wrap it up. For those who are joining us, students and educators, I've been saying this all week, this is our first go at this career prep series. We're hoping to possibly do some other series like this in the future, but we need your feedback. Students, if you're willing to take just 3 or 4 minutes to fill out a quick survey, we'd love your feedback. And you can do that at bit.ly/career prep jobs-students. And educators, if you're watching this live here with us or you're watching this recorded later, we want your feedback. For you, that would be bit.ly/career prep jobs-educator. Again, please just take 3 or 4 minutes to fill out a survey to tell us, hey, what worked? What session this week did you like the most? What did you get the most out of? What would you like to see going forward? Want to wrap up by saying once again, thank you to Mina and to Kaylee. We appreciate your time. We appreciate Express Employment Professionals for allowing you to come on and do this for us today.
Absolutely. We love doing this. You guys are the future.
Absolutely. And you also were kind enough, both of you, to say you were willing to share your email. If there are further questions, students or educators, that you wanted to follow up with Mina or Kaylee, they said, go ahead, email them. You have this burning question that you didn't get to ask today.
Yeah.
Educators, you said, hey, we love this. We need to do this more again. And now that we've had this recording, I can show my kids, hey, how do I help them help me do practice interviews with my students? Reach out to them, because they're going to be a great resource. This is what they do for a living. Finally, just one of my last slide, wanted to say, not only thank you to everybody else, but thank you to you for jumping on today. And I wanted to tell you my email address is up there on the screen, eric.kelleher@kentisd.org if you have further questions. And I do have, I know Kaylee and Mina had mentioned, we have some resources. A lot of the things that they said today, believe it or not, are right there in the resources. So if you have not checked it out before and you're like, okay, now I want to do a little bit deep dive, go to bit.ly/career prep-interviewing. Educators, if you're looking for some lessons that you could follow up with this, there's some stuff in there that you can get as well to use. I want to thank everybody for their time. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to our guests. And with that, I want to say have a great afternoon and a great weekend.
Bye, everyone. It was great meeting you guys.